Candy-colored ponies! I love them! But just because I'm a fan of the show doesn't mean I don't have my share of problems with it. It certainly isn't perfect, despite what some of my more obsessed colleagues may have you believe. For example, I really just don't understand why so many people are dying to see more adventure elements in MLP. I mean, I'm all for the writers having a good idea that's outside what they normally do for the series, but that's just the thing. Every time they've written something for the show that's had an overarching plot or a multi-episode story, they seem to be very uncomfortable. Everyone in the writing staff seems to be right at home when writing 22 minutes of slice-of-life comedy. When they do, the show feels natural, on beat, just really good. When they start to move to adventuring, though, everything becomes a lot more stiff, to the point where there seems to be some glaring plot holes and inconsistencies. Inconsistencies that have pulled me out of the experience. Now, before the FIM zealots call me out for saying something against the creation of the almighty Fausticorn, let me remind you that I love this show. I mean, look at my name. Look at my DeviantArt. Look at my blog. Look at my face! Friendship is Magic is a huge part of my life and has really affected me. But just because I love something doesn't mean I'm going to ignore all the weaker aspects of the experience and pretend they don't exist. And you'd be wise to do the same. Otherwise, you'll just come off as, well, this guy. Anyways, let's examine the 3 story-driven adventure arcs that MLP has delivered so far, and discuss where they work and where they don't work. I'm going to ignore the obvious plot holes Mare in the Moon brings up, such as the lack of sunlight killing all the crops and thus all life on Equestria. How does Luna survive on the moon without food, water, oxygen, etc.? Simply because it's already been established that Equestria operates under different principles than our own world, and that would just be too nitpicky. Even for me. And honestly, I really hate admitting that the Nightmare Moon arc is probably my least favorite of the 3 adventure arcs, possibly my least favorite episode in the series. Because, as far as I know, Mare in the Moon and Friendship is Magic are the only episodes penned by Faust herself, and they're the ones I have the most problems with. But I'll be honest, I love the beginning of this arc. The way we're introduced to Twilight and Spike, how we immediately understand Twilight's character through a subtle use of subtext, it all feels very cinematic, and very unlike your traditional MLP episode, especially viewing it now after watching all of Season 1 and 2 multiple times. The pacing, the character introductions, the interactions between the characters, all of Episode 1 is done nearly flawlessly. However, why has no one made the connection that Luna and Celestia are the ponies talked about in the myth? Why does everyone refer to it as an old mare's tale when they have an immortal ruler who controls the sun and the moon every day? I find it kind of hard to believe that no one made this connection in 1,000 years. Twilight writes a letter to the princess assuming that this fairy tale is fact, and thus must know that her teacher is the one who banished the Mare in the Moon to begin with. In fact, when Nightmare Moon says she's the one from the legend, the one banished for 1,000 years, Twilight confirms in response that she knows this.
Did you not recall the legend? Did you not see the signs?
I did, and I know who you are. You're the Mare in the Moon, Nightmare Moon.
Well, some pony who remembers me.
Add to the fact that Nightmare Moon makes a comment about how it appears her crown is no longer good enough.
Does my crown no longer count now that I have been imprisoned for 1,000 years?
And Twilight has to be aware that Celestia and Nightmare Moon are the characters from the legend, and thus sisters. Well, no. Despite being the one reading us the tale in the beginning of Episode 1, it's Twilight who initially expresses shock at the revelation that Luna and Celestia are sisters.
Sister?
There's literally no way around it. Twilight directly tells the audience this information, confirms her knowledge to Nightmare Moon, believes his tale to be fact enough to warn the princess, but never makes the connection that her teacher, the one she entrusted with solving the problem, is Nightmare Moon's sister and the one from legend who banished her? How? How do you miss that? You're smarter than this, Twilight. You know the square root of 546 off the top of your head, but couldn't piece this together? Speaking of banishing, how does this prophecy even make any sense in its own context? Why is it prophesized that Nightmare Moon will return in 1,000 years? Do the elements of harmony just run out of batteries or something? Did Nightmare Moon come back under her own power? If so, what was preventing her from coming back beforehand? Why wait 1,000 years? And if she didn't come back under her own power, who or what initiated her return? The prophecy mentions the stars, but what does that mean? We're never given any indication that the stars have any sort of special powers or abilities in MLP, or that they're sentient or something. So, what gives? Who's responsible? It certainly wasn't Celestia. she needed the elements to get Nightmare Moon to the moon in the first place. And if she didn't need them, why would she bring her angry sister back at all? Was Luna's timeout over and Celestia was just hoping she'd learn her lesson? The problem with prophecy and friendship is magic is that Celestia and Luna are, for all intents and purposes, gods. And when you put a name and a face to a deity, passing off something like prophecy doesn't really work anymore. Because prophecy implies divine intervention, but now God is one of your characters. So it would have to be that character's will that enables the prophecy to come to pass. So the question is, why would Celestia, god of Equestria, allow a prophecy that directly endangers herself and her subjects come to pass? There really doesn't seem to be a logical explanation as to why. Unless, maybe, and this is a bit of a tangent, so bear with me here, maybe this is all a test purposely put into place by Celestia. Think about it. Celestia was the original bearer of the elements of harmony along with her sister Luna. She had a connection with them. Once she was separated from them, however, it appears that she can no longer harness their power anymore.
But since Luna and I are no longer connected to the elements...
No longer connected?
Remember that little tidbit from Discord? Anyways, the elements in Celestia aren't on good terms anymore. Thus Equestria's most powerful weapon was out of her reach. However, she still knows what the elements are, and what, or better yet, who they would be attuned to, and vice versa. What's a monarch to do at this point? Well, perhaps open up a school for unicorns gifted in magic, it being a convenient excuse to silently search for the new bearer of the element of magic? And maybe, once found, take this unicorn under her wing and personally train her, unknown to the student that she was actually being prepared both mentally and physically for the battles ahead that Celestia herself could no longer fight, making sure said student is both emotionally attached and steadfastly loyal to her? And then, once she's completed her training, she maybe, I don't know, sends her pupil off to a distant land to unite with the other element bearers, each sporting a cutie mark almost identical to their respective elements, a connection that Celestia, being the original bearer herself, would easily pick up on. Then, finally, purposely allow Nightmare Moon to return, and either allow herself to be subdued or simply refuse to intervene, forcing her protege, who she has trained to this point to instinctively take action, take up the mantle she was always supposed to, thus indirectly putting the elements of harmony back under Celestia's control?
I knew you could do it.
I don't know. Just a thought. The biggest problem with episode 2, though, is pacing. Part 1 had perfect pacing. Everything felt completely on beat. Every scene had exactly the right amount of time to breathe and show us exactly what needed to be shown. It all felt completely natural. Part 2 has none of this. The entire time, it feels like we're on fast forward while event after disconnected event occurs so we can be beaten over the head with the obvious plot point that the main 6 are the elements of harmony. The initial pan as Twilight reveals the 5 known elements basically spoils the entire remainder of the episode for the audience. That one shot tells us without any doubt that the 5 represent the elements, with even a little sound effect thrown in like an audible checklist.
Kindness, laughter, generosity, honesty, and loyalty. The 6th is a complete mystery.
Only the most dense would still be wondering what the elements of harmony were after that. All the events that follow, that show us the characters represent the elements, aren't even necessary anymore, as we've already been given the answer. I know this is a minor point, but why not just use a different shot? A slow pan or zoom of a group shot would have done the exact same thing narratively without spoiling the key plot point for the next 20 minutes. On top of that, none of these now unnecessary events are even given the proper time to really develop or have the weight that they should. It all feels very contrived and rushed, as each character gets a quick minute to show their element in increasingly ridiculous circumstances.
I know!
And your expertly coiffed mane.
Oh, I know!
All ruined without your beautiful moustache.
It's true, I'm hideous!
I simply cannot let such a crime against fabulosity go uncorrected. It'll grow back.
So would the mustache.
Despite all this, though, I can't really blame the writing for this issue. Because while it could be tighter, and the events that show the characters' elements could be stronger, my main point of contention is pacing. And the simple fact of the matter is that pacing isn't just a matter of writing, but a matter of timing. And I honestly believe that the main reason Elements of Harmony doesn't work is because it wasn't given enough time. This is a huge arc. There is so much information to get into in here. We have a villain who's revealed to have a backstory of one of our characters, Princess Celestia, that we need to develop. We also have an entire ensemble cast to show and grow and to firmly establish as people we should relate and care about. And we also have a huge plot-related conflict to resolve. All in the span of 22 minutes? Are you fucking kidding me? This, fillies and gentlecolts, is the main problem with Elements of Harmony. It needed to be a 90-minute film. At least. Preferably, it would have been a series of episodes, starting with the same opening episode, but instead of squeezing everything else into a second, there would have been an episode for each of the main 6 to show their character and how they represent one of the Elements of Harmony by overcoming some sort of conflict as they travel through the Everfree Forest to confront Nightmare Moon. Essentially the exact same thing as before, but this time given proper time to develop each character and give their actions and revelations weight in the eyes of the audience. Not to mention sensible conflicts. And finally, the concluding episode would be a showdown with Nightmare Moon, flesh out her character a bit, explain her relationship with Celestia, and have Twilight realize she's the element of magic.